And I see that you started the recording, George. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. So if you want to switch to the next slide, George. So my name is Carol Brayford, as many of you know by now, and I'm the regional coordinator in the Tornadoes region, which includes, besides Missouri, where I live, it also includes Kansas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. And this is the workshop called Empowering Your Results. And when you empower your requests, and when you empower your requests, you accelerate your results. I stumbled on that one, sorry. So is anybody interested in that? Accelerating your results, maybe? Hopefully that's why you're here. Okay. What we're gonna, no, you wanna go to the next slide, George? So I'm really thrilled to be co-leading this session with my friend Paula Leppert, who's a volunteer in our Kansas City chapter. And I've known Paula for years, since before CCL, so it's really fun to co-lead this with her. Next slide. What we'll be doing in this workshop is first considering what kinds of requests you make and what kinds you don't make too. No, we're back. I'm still on that one. We're going to review the elements of a powerful request. So we're going to look at what actually makes a request powerful. And then we're going to look at what kind of request you could make that you could actually create during this workshop and practice making with one or two other people, not with a big crowd. So that's what we're going to cover today. And next slide. I first got involved with Citizens Climate Lobby after Marshall Saunders, our founder, created it over 10 years ago. And I had met Marshall a good 10 years before that, when we were both volunteering in Results. Our final plenary is the founder of Results, Sam Daly Harris. So Marshall started this organization, and what he talked about was how when he created it, he said what it's going to take ordinary people like me, who would have to organize, educate ourselves, and give up our hopelessness and gain skills to be effective with our government. And that's what this workshop is about, all of those. I would say it's going to impact all those things. So I'm going to turn this over to Paula now, and go to the next slide. There you go.
Cool. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. And it's my pleasure as well to get to lead this with Carol. As Carol said, this is a workshop. We're actually going to do some work. We're going to do kind of an exercise in crafting and making requests. So the first thing I want to look at is what kind of requests do you make now? And I don't mean, can I have a glass of water, or would you please go clean your room? I mean, especially as we look at, for instance, within CCL, what kind of requests do you make? Of course, we all make requests of our member of Congress to support our bill. But there are other requests that we make, both to people outside of CCL. Will you come volunteer and join CCL? Or to people within CCL. Would you teach me about carbon fee and dividend, or like that? So there are lots of requests you could be making. So if you're like me, your results might be that a lot of the time, I'd really rather do it myself than ask somebody else to do something for me. Just by kind of a show of hands, just wave. How many people are like that? You'd rather do it yourself than ask somebody. So what kind of a difference? And this is a place where you could actually put in the chat, or for this part of it, just think about what kind of a difference would it make for you if your requests were more effective, if you felt empowered to make requests and they were more likely to be accepted. Anybody have anything just right off the top of your head that you want to share? You'll have to raise your electronic hand for me to see you. Nothing? Okay, we're going to move on to the next slide. There will be plenty of opportunities for you guys to share. So for the exercise that we're going to do, pick an area that you want to focus on. Now, of course, we want you to focus on the kinds of requests you would make in CCL. And if you can't think of anything like that, then look at some other area of your life. But get clear about what it is you're wanting to ask for, what you want someone to provide for you. What is it that you need? You could think. So, and again, I'm looking for an example. So, you might think that you need someone to co-lead the lobbying team or your liaison team for your member of Congress. But when you really think about it, you might see that what you really need is somebody to schedule the appointments and submit the reports. So it's really important that you get really clear on what it is that you need. You don't necessarily want to ask someone to be your co-leader if all you need is somebody to keep the minutes at your chapter meeting. So, look at what outcome it is that you want. So hopefully you've got a piece of paper and something to write with or a digital device that you can take some notes on. But, start writing down what area you're going to focus on and what you would request. George, next slide. So, like Carol said, we're going to go over what the elements of a powerful request are. So, anybody who's ever done any lobbying gone to any lobby meetings with CCL, a lot of this may look familiar to you. In particular, starting with an appreciation. It really is all about relationships. And you want to start out by appreciating someone. Like, I might say, Carol, you're so organized. I really appreciate how you keep track of all these small particles of things. And then engage them with a question or a statement. Like, I'm not very organized. I wonder what would be possible for our chapter if somebody else kept track of all those particles for me that I tend to kind of wait until the last minute or they slide by the wayside. So then you want to make a clear and specific request. So I might say, Carol, would you be willing to be the administrator for our chapter and keep track of timelines and all those things like scheduling meetings and things like that. and just be really clear and specific about what you're requesting and the time frame. Like, I'd like you to start now, or have that done by the end of the week. And ask for everything that it is that you want. You know, I really do want you to take the meeting minutes and send out the minutes to the membership at the end of the end of the month, and you know, everything that you want. But then you also need to leave room for them to say yes, no, or I'll do some part of it. And be happy with whatever it is they choose as their offer or as their response. So, any questions on any of this so far? I can't see hands. I don't see electronic hands, so I'm going to assume we're okay. George, you'll let me know.
Yeah, you can put questions in the chat if you have them as we go along.
Okay. So George, next slide. And like I said before, if you have done any lobby meetings with CCL, some of the stuff on the previous slide looks pretty familiar because, like Mark Reynolds says, we're betting the ranch on relationships. I just wanted to throw that in there because when you're connected and like in relationship with the person you're making a request of, it's much easier for them to say yes or no. But you have to be connected to somebody to be able to make a powerful request of them. Next slide.
Okay, so now we're going to get to work on the workshop part of this session, and it's great to look at all those elements of a powerful request, and where this is going to make a difference for you is if you choose something, as Paula was saying, choose something that if you were to start making requests in that area, it would make a big difference for you in your role in CCL or in somewhere else in your life. So consider what it is that you want, not just, you know, you might be saying, okay, I need somebody to take on this role in CCL, but what is it that you really want them to do? And ask them to do that. Because it's way easier to work your way into a role by taking on some really specific task. So look at that and consider for yourself. I'm going to be quiet for a minute so you can look. What is it you want? And what would you request? I invite you to start writing. What's a request you could take on? Could be one that it would surprise you to actually make that request. Does anybody have one you want to share? You could just unmute yourself and share it. Yep. Are you thinking of a specific request that might be a little bit hard, might be a little bit outside your comfort zone to ask?
I'll volunteer.
Is that you, Anne? Your name says group development.
Yeah, I know. They never did get my name right. The example that I think would work for me is I'd really like someone in my group to write a letter to the editor. And problem that I would have is I need to choose someone who can actually follow the CCL outline and do an effective, and who also won't go, what shall I say, off the rails and say things that are more, uh, a little more explosive than that. And I have several people in our group that would have a problem with that. So actually, I would have a conundrum there, because there are people who would be willing to do it, but I don't know that I would feel they were appropriate, because they wouldn't take the guidance that I would want to give them. So
Good.
that would be something that I could take advice on, is how
Yeah.
do you
It's
get
good.
someone to do something for you if you can't just give them free rein in it?
Yeah, it's perfect. Now, did you say like writing a letter to the editor? Is that where you started? I was changing
Yes,
the
yeah.
name. Yeah, I thought it was. So in that, I'm going to address that in itself, because I never ask somebody to write a letter to the editor and send it in without somebody else looking at it. We just kind of have that guideline in our group, that when you write a letter to the editor, send it to our media guy so he can review it. He's a great editor and he can catch your mistakes, but he can also watch to see, is it really following the CCL standard, real, and it's not like a standard, but our policy, our practice of always having respect and honoring people and not attacking. So yeah, I like that. But that's a perfect example to also use in this exercise now, because that we're going to get at some of those kinds of issues. So thank you, Anne. That was a good way to get the ball rolling like that.
Which editor are you referring to? One in your own group or one on the website with CCL?
No, Richard, we write letters to the editor in the newspaper because our members of Congress actually have people on their staff that read the newspapers every day to see where they're mentioned. So we write letters to the editor that reference some kind of an article or something that's been posted in the newspaper. And then we give we make our pitch for having effective climate legislation. So
I understand that part. What I'm asking is, before an individual who would write these letters for a group, a subgroup in CCL, before they send the letter, there's an editor within CCL.
No,
okay, so who would that be?
No, that's something that we do group by group. In our group in St. Louis, we have a person who's our media person. Most of our chapters have a media person, and that media person can review the draft letters to the editor before they go out. And those media persons are usually people who are very, very good writers and good at editing. So it varies group to group though. But it is an important point that Anne makes, because we don't want letters to the editor to be posted and reference Citizens Climate Lobby if it's not actually following our values of how we treat people. It is all, we're betting the ranch on relationships, as Paula said. So
well, the reason I asked, we had a discussion about the differentiation in our local group just recently. And off the top of my head, I would say, yeah, you can write anything you want, but don't put CCL's name on it.
Well, that's true. As citizens, we can write any letters we want, but those of us who are group leaders don't do that very much, because people know that we're part of Citizens Climate Lobby. But yeah, technically you could. Thank you, Richard. Okay, so let's see. So that gets you going, but I do invite you to write down what you would request, what specifically you would request. And then also start considering who you would make the request of. So I'm going to give you another couple minutes to that.
Carol, if somebody wrote a question, what they'd like to request in the chat, and Stephen and Danielle say, I would like to ask someone to arrange opportunities for me to meet with local grass tops individuals or groups to discuss climate change.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a good request.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So in this workshop, we're going to craft it to be a little more powerful. But I think that's a really good start. That's a good focus.
Okay, and I'm going to go to the next step because I want to address what might be coming up for some of you. So can we do the next slide, George? Thank you. So there's some pitfalls when you go to make a request. And one of them is to look at how you're predicting their response. So we all do this. So let's just see if you can see where, when you do this kind of thing, do you think about, okay, I know what they're going to say, so I won't ask them. Or I'm sure they're too busy. I can't ask them to do that. Is that familiar to some of you? That like weeding out all the people you're going to ask because you already know what they're going to say. Making a request of someone honors them. And it is an acknowledgement. I remember when Mark Reynolds called me and asked me to be a regional coordinator, my response was yes. I didn't ask any questions about what it meant or what it was going to entail. Man, if I only knew. No. It's such, you know, but I can see that with other people. A lot of times when I make a request, they're delighted to take on what I'm requesting. And that, don't forget that is a gift to people. And then another pitfall is that you really what it is that you think a good response is. You know, if you're really attached to them saying yes, well, maybe a good response is actually one where you got over in their world and you asked them a question and made a request of them, and you made it really specific and you gave them a time frame. It's a really good request if when the other person feels really satisfied with the process, that you gave them a choice to either say yes or to say no, or to say, I can't do that, but I could do this, or I, you know, like counteroffer in some way. So I'm going to give you a couple more minutes now before, and then, yeah, and then what we'll do is give you a chance to practice this. So go ahead and write down the whole request. And George, do you want to put the next slide up? And I'm going to put what's on that slide. Yeah. So George, you want to do Yeah.
Carol, I'm putting it in the chat. I already have it copied. I'll post it in the chat.
Okay, when you're ready. So go ahead. Yeah. So just go ahead and work for a minute, and then we'll give you a chance to practice.
You know what I find helpful is follow-ups. You may have a request, but if you continue to follow up, whether you get the response you want or not, you've established a relationship. And that's more important than a one-time.
Yes, Richard. And I find that sometimes I make the request and I don't actually get a response. And I have to follow up to actually find out if they said yes or not. So we have a lot of different ways we do this. Thank you.
Carol, can I just say sometimes I'm afraid I will intimidate, especially new members, by asking them of something and then they'll just run away.
Yeah, yeah, I can get that. And I would do it anyway, because I think they'll like it. Just ask them to do a small task, you know, and a short-term one that, you know, like, and not to, you know, find things that you want done in the next few weeks or in the next month so they could come back to the next meeting and share about it or something like that. Yeah, it's a challenge, Jennifer. I get it.
Yeah, but you're sharing the energy. It's contagious. You got to just keep trying.
That's great, Richard. Thanks.
Hi, this is Danielle, and I just wanted to share something about requests. And I heard this on it was a long time ago on NPR. They were talking about how rude the French are and how they're so unhelpful. And they did an example about, someone coming up to a Frenchman and asking him for directions or something. And the way they got the response was they started out by saying, "Hi, I really need your help." And that "I need your help." Oh my goodness, the French were all over it. They would go out of their way to help this person get to where he was going, or, whatever he needed. It was the, "Hey, I could really use some of your help." And I find that I go back to that sometimes, and it really does put people in the right frame of mind before you get to your ask.
Yeah, that's
So I want to share
wonderful.
that with you.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you. That's a good one. And I also see that, Paula, you mentioned there was another question in the chat, and I see it's from Jean. And Jean, you're talking about our calling our members of Congress. And when you're doing those calls to members of Congress on the monthly calling campaign or whatever, that is a different situation. And they do find, because it's an intern answering the phone, the first thing you talk about is what they're going to say the call is about. So you do want to start on that, saying, "I'm calling about climate change." You could acknowledge them at some point in the call, but the interns in our members' office really just keep track of how many calls they got on each topic. So that is a really different situation. When we're in our lobby meetings, of course, Jean, we start with an acknowledgement, and it often throws them off, actually, I found, because they're not used to getting acknowledged, and it really lets us connect in a special way. So, yeah, I love that story about the French.
I love the story that Danny Richter told about the Republicans, that they like Citizens Climate Lobby because we're the only ones not yelling at them right now.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to add about your French anecdote. New Yorkers are the same way.
Yeah.
So we get a bum rap, but you ask for help, you'll get it.
Okay, so I think, Paula, that it makes sense for us to move along.
Okay,
Okay.
George, can we have the next slide? So, like we said, this is the workshop. So now we're going to do some more work, and you're going to do some work on requesting with one or two other people. We have some breakout rooms set up, and we're going to send you there, and you're going to, we'll have at least 10 minutes, maybe even a little more, that you can practice requesting. And, whoever you're talking to might have some suggestions for you, and they might have some really great things to say, like requests to make, or engaging questions or statements to use. And don't be shy about stealing. If somebody else has something really great, use that. This is a working session for you guys. We've put in the chat those 6 elements of a powerful request, so you'll be able to see them in your breakout room.
Okay, well, I really would love to hear how it went. And what I request that people do is, let me get rid of this thing off my screen for a second, is raise your electronic hand, which is down under reactions. Raise your electronic hand if you would be willing to do 2 things. Share your request, the one you just practiced, with all the elements, and tell us what shifted for you or what you discovered for yourself out of practicing that. And can you imagine actually making that request now? So raise your electronic hand. I see some brave souls have started the game off, but raise your electronic hand if you would be willing to share your request and what you saw from the practicing and whether or not you'd be willing to make that request now. Okay, Stephen and Danielle, is it going to be both of you or just one? You can unmute. Unmute yourself, Stephen. Can you unmute yourself, Stephen? Looks like you're talking.
Oh.
There you go.
Yeah, so I'll try to take my first cut at this, and if Danielle wants to add something, she
Oh,
can.
good.
My ask was the one I typed into the chat about I'd like to ask someone to arrange opportunities for me to meet with local grass tops individuals or groups to discuss climate change. And so what I learned in our breakout session that I thought was particularly helpful is that, first of all, I don't really have an individual identified that I would think would be suitable to make that ask of, but I knew what qualities of that individual I wish they had. And we talked about that. You know, I wish there was someone that I knew that was really well connected in my relatively small community here in little old Russellville, Arkansas, that knew, you know, all the businessmen and all the political representatives to the city council and, you know, yada, yada, yada type stuff. Who would be willing to, you know, help me get on speaker programs and maybe afterwards use that as an introduction to members and gather them together either individually or in small groups and plumb their information about, you know, what do they think about this climate change stuff and how, you know, what's their view, and try to engage them in conversation and so on. And the good advice that I got was that, yeah, you may not know who that individual is, but you need to start asking anybody you know that might have those qualities, and just keep asking until you get some sort of success.
Yeah, and asking those people who they would suggest you ask.
Precisely.
Yeah, it really is classic networking, especially with grass tops. That's really good. And I've heard of some groups who have, somebody just said, okay, we used to do our endorsements literally with a piece of paper. We'd ask people to endorse and fill out a piece of paper before we systematized it. And I remember a woman went up and down one block in her town and asked every business owner to endorse, and most of them did.
I don't think I get that result, but I like it.
Yeah. Well, we had 3 different forms too. You could just say, I'm concerned about climate change. That was a big step for some of them.
Yeah, that's what that would be a major accomplishment, I view it.
Yeah, right. But it gets you connected, and then you could ask them who else they suggest. And Danielle, what did you want to?
That's a good way to have, you know, not have them jump all the way in and, you know, sign in on the act itself, but to give them little steps so that, you know, they don't feel so committed.
Yeah.
Or something. So I like that idea of just giving them, yeah, I'm concerned about climate, or yeah, you know, I like carbon dividend and I want to endorse it, and, you know, different steps so that they can find the right place for them. I think that was a good idea.
And it is kind of what we're saying about really being specific with your ask too, because, and it is one of those places for sure with some people that you don't want to jump right to the end product. You got to get their feet wet first. I don't know if Jacob's on here or not, but I did ask Wes Jackson once if he would endorse the bill, and he said yes. But I also told him that Peter Raven in St. Louis had just endorsed it. And he said, well, if Peter did it, I'll do it.
I wish I knew someone like that.
And when I told people in Kansas that, they said, who said that Wes Jackson endorsed that bill? And
maybe a Razorback coach or something like that.
I knew that 2 of them were collaborating on something at that time, so it was fun. Okay, who else would like to share? Either share your request or share what you took away from the exercise. Make it easier. I'll do 2 separate requests. Share. I see you, Jennifer, raising your physical hand. Do you want to share? Go ahead. There you go.
Well, I kind of have a question. So, you know, if you have a bigger request, let's say, you know, you're looking for a grassroots leader or something, something that's a little bit bigger.
I don't know if
You had specified to ask for everything that you want, and we were kind of debating that versus breaking it down and maybe just asking for a part of it. So I wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Hold on, Jennifer, is there somebody talking behind you right now? Was there? Because I was hearing, now you're muted, but there was
Now?
background noise. Was a member of your family also talking?
Probably.
I was just looking for which line was unmuted and I couldn't find one.
No,
So would you say your question again? Because I was a little distracted by that. She's asking them. She has a full family there during COVID. I know it's hard. I think they were asking her something. Okay, do you want to ask again?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so sorry about that. I'm just wondering if you're asking for a bigger thing, like you're looking for a, like say, for example, like a grassroots leader, would you ask for all of the parts, which is what you guys said, or would you try to break it down so that it's not so intimidating as something to start up? So I guess I wasn't quite, we kind of debated that, and I don't know if we came up with a clear answer on which way you would take that.
Yeah, I actually think more from the conversation with Stephen and Danielle that it might really make sense to start with a smaller piece, or to ask them. I love the fact that this is getting into Grass Tops outreach, because it is a major focus of ours right now. So it's wonderful that your requests are in that area for some of you. And if you start with talking to somebody, a Grass Tops person, about climate and what their concerns are, and not even making a request up front, maybe. But then the requests for endorsements can start with, are you concerned about climate? They can also, they can actually endorse the bill, endorse the concept of putting a price on carbon. So you can take steps like that to see in your conversations if you're not sure at all. So does it, that's kind of where I'm seeing it. Does that make sense, Jennifer? Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, Carol, is if you really are looking for somebody to be a team leader, whether it's for Grass Tops or Grassroots or whatever, you could actually lay out to them what the job description is. That's part of it being really clear and specific what you're requesting. So now you've broken it out into some pieces that they could possibly say, I'm not willing to take on the whole thing, but I'll do this.
And I apologize, Jennifer, were you actually asking about like a team leader within your group?
Yeah.
Oh, it was. I misunderstood you. I'm sorry. I got distracted by that noise. Yeah. So if that's, yeah, then what Paul is saying, and another thing that often helps is just often really works for people is to take on one aspect of a role first without even considering the role. Just take on an aspect. And for you as a group leader, because I know you are one, just breaking up even the group leader role into different pieces and inviting somebody else to do pieces. The more I do that, the easier that role becomes, because I end up with a whole team. And then they can gradually take on more. Yeah, but I agree. If you think somebody would be really wonderful for a role, showing them the whole role is a good idea, so they can see if it works for them. But a lot of times people might want to be ready for one task, and then maybe another, and then maybe another. And before you know it, they might be being that. Yeah. Okay, so does anybody else want to share what you saw from the practice? Anybody want to share what you requested? Okay. So we have a few more. Oh,
I'll try that, Carol.
This is
Al
Alfred.
Rigby. All right, great.
I have a friend who was a great member of the Johnson County Move On group that I was chair, and she's an English teacher, like Sandy. And I'm going to use this elements of powerful request to ask her to be the editor. Join CCL first. She hasn't joined. Her name is Corliss, and she's an retired English teacher. And I'm going to ask her to edit any newspaper clippings that our chapter is pondering for the Kansas City Star, just like she did for our Move On group. So that gets two birds with one stone.
Okay, and I think Jennifer's smiling over there. Al's group leader. That's cool. Yeah, you can do something like that to get her engaged. That's a cool idea.
Good.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful.
Hey, Carol,
Yes,
it's 4:25
yes.
and Sam's talk starts at 4:30.
Oh, I'm so glad you said something. So George, would you put up this other slide and I will send people about it. So actually we need to break and go over and meet Sam Daly Harris. George, would you put up the slide for the transition? And then I will send all of you an email about another program that you could take if you wanted to get more practice on this kind of thing. But if you just go to that transition slide, George, that would be good. This empowerment partnership program, I'll send you stuff about.
There we go.
And that one. So what we're going to do is
Yeah.
go right back to where we were before. Tornadoes Plenary, that same link you used at the beginning to start with tornadoes. You can go back to that. And we're going to start in 5 minutes. I don't know what I did to just completely forget, not realize what time it was. Well, I just got so enrolled in all your sharing. That's all.
We're so engaged.
So thank you. Thank you very, very much for participating in this. At the end of the day, we're going to give you a little survey so that you can, very quick little thing to fill out. And please give us your feedback. Paula and I just created this ourselves with Jean Rytock's handout, and we'd love your feedback. So let's all zip right over to that other line.
Can you share that
Tornadoes.
link again? That link?
So we have
It's
to go
right
out
there
of
on the
this.
screen.
It doesn't automatically.
You have to leave this
Okay.
Zoom line, and can we put that in the chat?
That would be really helpful.
So go backwards. Go back a slide. Go back to it, George. I need that transition slide that you just had. Next one. Next one.
A link in
Two
the
more.
chat.
There.
Not up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. It's been a long day. There it is. Click on it. I'm gonna click on it myself.
Thank you. See you in the next
Thank
room.
you. Bye.
Honey.
I'll save it. Link, grab it, and then leave. Everybody have it?
They're disappearing as I click it, I think.